Carl, we just finished a fabulous wine tasting with cheese, and I've realized something, that I've been drinking wine all wrong all these years. So can you just take me through it? Somebody just poured me a lovely glass of rather expensive wine. What's the first thing, as opposed to gulping it, what's the first thing I should be doing when someone pours me a great glass of red or white?
The classic answer to that are the 5 S's. And what you do is you see it, you look at the color, you swirl it, okay, and that gets the film of wine on the side so it starts evaporating. Then you smell, all right, and then the 4th S is sip, and the 5th S is swallow.
That's a lot of work.
But it's natural. It's just what you do. So you take the glass, you look at it, you swirl it, you sniff it, you sip it, and then you swallow it, and it's so easy.
Right.
Talk about, because a word that has come up over and over and over again, and I don't know how we're going to describe it on the radio, is tannins. And I don't know if for people that are just getting into wine, and I think there are probably a lot of people who would love to get into wine, but so many of the terms and the terminology and the nomenclature and all of that just becomes dizzying after a while. So the word that seems to come up with everybody is tannins. Talk to me about, what are tannins? How do I know if my wine's got too many, not enough, just the right amount?
Okay, tannins are primarily compounds that come from the skins or the seeds of a grape, and they are part of the antioxidant nature of a wine. So if you think about a white wine, you make that without the skins or the seeds, and so white wines tend to have very low tannins. Red wines, on the other hand, that's where the color comes from, is the skins, and so you have quite a bit of tannin. Now, these tannin molecules are good for aging, so wines that have a lot of tannin will tend to age longer than others. What does a tannin taste like? Well, the 2 best ways I can describe that is if you make a pot of very strong tea, hot tea. Don't put any sugar in it, honey, nothing like that. Just drink the tea by itself. You'll get this very bitter character on the finish. That is tannin. That's exactly the same molecule that you have in a wine. The other thing is a very dark chocolate. You know, not a sweet chocolate, but a dark baking chocolate. You bite into that, it's, kind of weird tasting, but those are tannins, and that comes in chocolate, and so that's the flavor. So if you want it to taste like, tea or dark chocolate.
Can you give us, Carl, a brief overview of the Texas wine industry?
Brief is difficult,
yeah,
but really, Texas was the first place in the continental United States where wine was started. It came up with the Spanish from Mexico. Later, it was planted by the Spanish in California, so we were first. We like to point that out. But the Texas wine industry has done extremely well over the years. The Prohibition hurt all of the wine industry in the United States. It was really kind of devastating, but we've begun to recover from that starting back in the 60s. We've seen just a dramatic growth in people interested in wine, people interested in making wine, growing grapes, and we're doing really well. Just for example, here in Texas Hill Country, along Highway 290, the wine trail where we're located today, back in 1992, Richard Becker, Dr. Becker, started his winery, and that was only the 3rd one on this wine trail. Today, there are over 40 different wineries along this path. So in a very short time, we've made a tremendous amount of progress. Today, there are somewhere between 350 and 380 wineries in Texas, and everybody's just having a great time. Now, there's one little piece of history that I should put in here as part of the Texas chronology. When phylloxera, which is a root louse, and it kills vines, was brought from the U.S. over to Europe, and it basically devastated the vineyards in Europe, the late 1800s and early 1900s. There was much research done to try to figure out, how do you fix this? How do you stop this from happening? And there were, I think, 3 different people around the world, one in France, one in Italy, and one here in Texas, that figured out how to fix it. And that is the concept of grafting. You graft a Cabernet Sauvignon French vine on top of a Texas rootstock. And so a lot of the Texas rootstocks that were here were taken to Europe, and it really saved the wine industry around the entire world. And T.V. Munson is the guy's name who did this, and he is highly honored. He was only the 2nd person not of French origin to ever win the French Legion of Merit for saving the French vineyards. So Texas has a very strong history in wine.
I'm going to ask you the same question in 2 different ways.
Okay.
And they're both the same question. The first way to ask it is, what dictates the price of a bottle of wine? Is it what it costs to produce it? Is it the grapes? Is it what? And the second way to ask the very same question is there such a thing as a good $8 bottle of wine?
Let me answer the second one first. Yes, there are some good $8 bottles of wine. Great? No. Good? Yes. You tend to get pretty much what you pay for up to, I would say, in the $25 range, maybe. And so I think a $10 bottle wouldn't be as good as a $20 bottle, or $15 wouldn't be as good as a $25. I think the numbers would bear out that it costs you somewhere in the range of about $22 to $28 a bottle to produce a wine, and you've done just about everything you can to it to make it as good as it's going to be. Past that, it becomes, well, what the cost of the fruit is, what the cost of the land is, how much you had to pay for your tractor. Then, there's a lot of capital intensiveness in this. I know people that buy, $1,300, $1,400 French oak barrels. That's a huge part of the wine. It's about $3 a bottle to the wine. And so there's things you can do to really add it up. But when you get over that, I'd say that $30, $40 range, it's just rarity. How badly do I want it, and how much am I willing to pay for it? So these bottles that are worth $1,000 or demand $1,000 on release, there's no way a wine's worth $1,000 unless that's what I want, and I have $1,000 to pay for it.
And, Carl, we just finished pairing some fabulous cheeses with various wines. What do you say to people who don't do any pairing? Like I know I grew up being Italian and all. My dad made his own wine. There was just the one wine with every food. He drank the wine, he drank the food. There was no pairing this with that.
Well, as we've learned today, there are things that go better together. Mm-hmm. Certain cheeses will go better with certain wines. Certain foods will certainly go better with certain wines. But the bottom line really boils down to is, what do you like to drink? What do you like to eat? And if you're eating and drinking what you like, and you're surrounded by people that you like, you're having a good time, well, you really can't mess that up too bad. Mm-hmm. So, don't stand on pretense. Don't put too many requirements on what you're doing, but I think it is fun and important for people to explore those options. What does go best with this? And if you have 2 or 3 wine options to work with a particular dish, we'll try them all 3, and one will typically go better than the others.
Because if somebody buys me an expensive wine, it's going to go with anything I have at home. Trust me.
Well, I have a strange friend that one of his most famous sayings, and it's kind of weird when you think about it. He says, what goes best with this wine? No, tongue. Just pour it in your mouth and drink it. It goes really good, So I mean, it's just and very, very sacrilegious in a way, but it's true,
So you are the wine educator here. Now, I mean, when we come down to Fredericksburg, can we get a wine education here at 4.0 Cellars? How do we do that?
Well, we started on that today with our cheese and wine pairing, Texas Cheese and Wine Experience. As a wine educator, I have a number of things that I do for the staff and for the public in general. I write up a lot of information for our staff about the wines that we're pouring. I write up a newsletter that goes out when we have our wine club releases. What are these wines? Where were they made? What should you expect from them when you get them? Then I write up information. I have 2 different blog sites that I write for about different pieces of information. Just wrote one, for example, on the Cabernets, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Ruby Cabernet. What are they and why are they different? And it's just stuff like that. So it's fun to do that, and I've spent a lot of time learning this information, and it's a great pleasure for me to share it with people.